looked to be about 6:30, so I'll call the meeting to order. Thank you to everyone for attending the meeting of Chorley Liaison on Wednesday the 16th of July. I had a short thought about going round the room and introducing ourselves, but I think it's going to put about 15 minutes on the meeting, so I think we can manage. Unless anybody particularly wants us to do that, we can do. I'll take that as okay then. My name's Councillor Gordon France and I'm the chair of the committee. My vice chair unfortunately can't be here tonight, County Councillor Kim Snape. She's on a Zoom meeting. Please note this meeting is being streamed on YouTube. We are live, are we? Yeah? Yeah, brilliant. When you're speaking, please speak towards the microphone so everyone can hear you. Please do not obstruct your mouth to ensure that anyone lip reading can see. If anyone is having issues, please let Democratic Services know. Some housekeeping. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarm sounds, please exit the way you came in. Please ensure that any mobile phones are switched to silent. If the technology fails, I will adjourn the meeting and try and resolve the issue. Otherwise, we'll set another day. Apologies. We've just got Michelle Beach, have we? And Kim, obviously.
We've had a few more late apologies, so we've got representatives from Adlington, Heath Charnock as well have also submitted apologies, right. Unless there's any more anyone else is aware of.
The minutes. Can we accept the minutes of an accurate record of the last meeting?
Sure. I gave apologies for that meeting, but I don't appear anywhere on there at all.
Okay, well, can that be changed? Anything else anybody's concerned about? Yes, Ian.
But on the minutes it refers to Adlington Parish Council and it should be Adlington Town Council.
Again then, yeah. Yeah, we'll change that, Ian. Yeah, try and be inaccurate as we can. Right.
There was a query around a response from LCC Highways. We have had a response outlining some of the procedures they go through in terms of highway repairs and how their processes work. Unfortunately, there wasn't an offer to come and attend the meeting, a future meeting, sorry, so it was just kind of a brief update on that, really, before we move on with the rest of the agenda.
Although we have got County Councillor Clemson here, who's the lead member for Highways, so thank you for attending, John. So if there are any queries, right, go to. We don't expect you to be able to answer them here and now, John, but obviously you take them away. Anything else? Can I have a proposal, please? Alistair, seconder. Terry. All in favour? Thank you. Moving on. To welcome the chair, I've welcomed everybody. That's done with. Item 3 is an item suggested by, an item on Chorley Council's food waste service, and we've got Doug Cridland here. This is Doug, who's the shared waste service manager. He's going to do a short presentation, and then we'll take questions afterwards. You don't want it to go on? Yeah. So we'll take them afterwards. Okay. Take it away, Doug.
Right, thank you very much, Chair. Thanks very much, Chair, and good evening, everyone. I'm Doug Cridland, Waste Services Manager, and I'll be giving a short presentation on food waste collections, which, although it may seem some distance away for me, it's fast approaching. So, in a nutshell, what are we going to do? It's to implement weekly food waste collections for every resident in the borough, and collections are due to commence from Monday, 30th of March 2026. This is a corporate strategy project to create the infrastructure for food waste collections, and we'll be using government funding specifically for implementing food waste collections. Next slide. So just a bit of background to this, why food waste collections. UK households produce around 6.5 million tonnes of food waste every year, and food waste is the single largest material found in residual waste bins, typically around 33%. reducing and recycling this food waste will be essential in meeting recycling and circular economy targets. Chorley's recycling rate currently stands at 41.8%, and the national and local waste strategy targets have been set at 65% by 2035, so we do have some way to go. Food waste collections are mandatory now under the Environment Act 2021, the deadline being from the 1st of April 2026, and this also fits within the government's simpler recycling reforms for all households to have food waste collections. So what do we hope to achieve? We're looking to achieve a 60% plus participation rate, hopefully higher, but this is based on existing schemes that are already in place in other parts of the country. So that's a relatively high participation rate, so that's what we are going to aim for. We estimate we'll recycle around 3,700 tonnes of food waste a year, which will come out of the residual waste stream and into recycling. We expect the residual waste to reduce per household by about 70 kilograms per year. This should lead to around a 10% decrease in our recycling rate, and it's designed to meet the aspirations of residents who wish to recycle more and reduce their waste. So when will this happen? So as I said, weekly food waste collections are expected to start from Monday the 30th of March 2026. We'll be distributing new food waste containers with a starter pack to all residents. This will take place from Monday the 9th of February to Friday the 27th of March. Resident communications campaign will commence later this year, and it's currently under development. However, in the background, we have already made quite significant progress towards this project. A team of officers have been formed from across the council who are meeting regularly to ensure we are tracking progress towards our key milestones. We've got a very detailed project plan, a Gantt chart, risk register, and a service impact assessment. We've undertaken a service modelling exercise to determine what resources will be required for these and for the collections and the costs. And through that, we've identified that we'll need 6 new food waste collection rounds, which will cover the whole borough every week. So in terms of, progress to date, so we've ordered 7 new vehicles, have been procured, and they're due to arrive in January. That's from a company called Terberg Matek. And food waste containers have been ordered from IPL Plastics, 110,000 food waste containers, since it's 2 per property. Again, these are due to arrive in January. In terms of depot space, we've had to start to redevelop the council's storage yard at Yarrow Bridge in order to host the expanded waste collection fleet, which will relocate from its current position at South Ribble's Moss Side depot. And we've started planning the new collection routes. These have been provisionally designed, and it's essentially combining the sort of households that are served fortnightly with the green bin and then the alternate week on the blue bin, and they're put together to form weekly collection rounds for every property. Staff recruitment, we'll be looking to recruit 6 drivers and 11 loaders on full time. They'll be inducted and trained early in the new year to work on the new food rounds. And we have appointed a specialist contractor who will distribute all the containers and the starter packs to households. So what will residents receive? Every property will be provided with 2 small bins for food waste, a smaller 7-litre indoor caddy, which is designed to fit in the kitchen, where food waste is typically generated, and then an outer 23-litre bin with a lockable lid that will be kept outside, and this will be put out for collection alongside residents' wheel bins. The starter pack will comprise 2 rolls of recycled plastic liners to use in the indoor caddy, and there'll be an information leaflet to explain the new service. Communications is key in a project like this. Obviously, it's going to be a universal service. We need to get the message out loud and clear. It needs to be very well understood. So we'll be informing the residents around what bins they will be receiving, what they should be used for. We'll ensure residents and all stakeholders will understand the rollout process, what's happening when, and what the new collection requirements are. Encouraging residents to separate their food waste for recycling and try and encourage participation in this scheme. It will reduce the amount of food waste in residual waste bins. And we'll also be looking to kind of refresh and reinvigorate guidance on reduce, reuse, recycle messaging, how to use current wheelie bins and how to maximise recycling for the current service as well. I don't have a detailed schedule of communications plan just yet. We're still working on the communications plan, but I've just provided there a selection of some of the communications messages and actions that we'll be carrying out. Obviously, the key ones being the starter packs. We'll be placing stickers on bins, potentially some advance notice to residents via email, etc. So they're all there. And some of the key messages we'll be looking to get across are listed there. So essentially, when will the new service start? How to use your food waste recycling service. That it will be collected on the same day as your bins are currently collected now. A message that any bag will do. So as much as we're providing liners for residents as a starter pack, they may choose to use their own bags, and any bag will do. Plastic bag, carrier bag, compostable bag, can accept anything. We'll get messages across about why recycling food waste is so important, and then what food waste will be used for once it's recycled. It's also an opportunity to push out messages about reducing avoidable food waste, as well as recycling, to avoid it in the first place. And I've provided on the final slide just a bit of a timeline of where we are. So we've had all the Cabinet Council approvals for this new service. We procured food waste containers and vehicles, designed collection rounds, and we've started works to upgrade the depot just in the last month, and we'll be next moving on to communications plan, and then following through to things like staff recruitment, start the communications campaign later in the year, and then in the new year we'll be distributing the containers and really pushing those messages out. So that's it in a nutshell. I hope I kept that simple and brief, but I'll open it up to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Right, open it to the floor. Have we got any questions? Aaron.
That was in January, I think. Yeah.
I seem to recall saying about having an insert into the bins, because it was mentioned that the bins might be blowing in the street. That bin doesn't fit inside a bin, it sits on the street.
That's right, yes, yes. It's different to the old inner caddy that we used to have that sat inside the blue bin, you may recall. That was for paper. It's a different design. I think the key thing is it has to be suitable for the purpose of food waste, so it needs to be sort of designed so that the crews can lift it up, residents can use it easily, but also it's not too heavy when it's lifted, because there's obviously a weight restriction in terms of health and safety.
Well,
so.
I get that, just the previous one, through you, Chair, fitted inside the bin, so they took the bin out, and yes, you might have to move it from one bin this week to a different bin next week, but they took it out, and I'm just a bit concerned that when we get some of our nice winds, particularly on what's known as Park Road wind, we're going to be all over the place.
Yeah, I think the thing with the previous incarnation, which was used for the paper, was it wasn't a sealed container. So with food waste under the animal byproducts regs, it has to be sealed and lockable, which this is designed for. So I don't think the inner bin is a do. I take your point about windy days. If there is very strong winds, it could happen. It does happen with bins even.
Put a brick in it.
We have done some research with other councils that are currently operating food waste services. Their views are they haven't had as many issues with wind. It includes research into some of the Welsh councils that are operating food waste collections, and I think I spoke with one of their representatives and they said that hasn't been a big issue for them, even in windy, wet Wales.
Thank you.
It's promising. It may happen, but we'll do what we can. Okay. Exactly. Thank you.
Yes, Alistair.
Just to make a point. Thank you. Just to make a point, obviously, the procurement that you spoke about the bins, the wagons, all that, we've done a lot of that in tandem with other districts, haven't we? So not only with South Ribble, who are obviously doing it as well, but with a lot of the districts across Lancashire to get some of the benefits of group procurement. Although a lot of councils are at a different point at the moment, aren't they, on their plans. So some, I think we got a briefing from the County Council Waste guys a couple of weeks ago at Lancashire Leaders, which said a couple of councils were actually in danger of missing that deadline, which I would say is very worrying given it's a statutory requirement. So we are quite well placed. There is a benefit from staying inside the herd and being with everybody else, because you get the benefit of that group procurement and you're not out there on a limb doing it early or doing it late. So that plan to me works. And we won't be probably using exactly the same collection arrangements as South Ribble at this stage, but that could be merged in due course if that suits. And that's about contract arrangements, etc. So that's about that really. But and the other point to make is with county colleagues here is the ultimate place this stuff will go is the recycling plant at Farrington, which is a problem for South Ribble because it may create spells and all the rest of it, which has happened in the past. But it's also a benefit for the county council because they will get a better efficiency for their credits and their cost of running of that plant. So, and I made the point on behalf of Chorley Council and others that some sharing of those benefits will be helpful, because at the moment we're just incurring the cost, which isn't fully supported by government funding, because it never is. That's all I'd like to say, Chair.
Eddie?
Thank you, Chair. Following on from what Alistair just said, recently I went on a tour of the revised and updated plant at Farrington, and given that Chorley and South Ribble are the residents most likely to be concerned about this, and also with historic issues over the tip, it might be worth requesting somebody from the county's food waste team comes and gives an updated presentation close to the time to members here, and maybe arranges for relevant members to go, because a lot of the misconception, it's not actually the plant, it's the vehicles, it's things like that, and they made quite a lot of changes. So I think if we can all have a consistent message around that, that will hopefully give one less problem for residents when we get to that point.
Thank you. Anybody else? Julia?
Can I just ask about the Farrington site and whether we've dealt with the resistance to taking on board for the council in South Ribble were very reluctant. Has that all been addressed? Have they?
I'll probably say what Doug can't say. South Ribble is where it is, and there is also one in Wyre, isn't there, up towards Fleetwood direction, yeah. So that's the idea, there's a north and a south. Now, obviously, the big issue is what Doug just said about wagons transporting this waste into that plant, because it has been quieter, and now it will go back to being busier, and there are issues. Is there resistance? Yes. South Ribble, people living in South Ribble near that plant will suddenly experience an increase in wagons, smells and all the rest of it associated with that. Obviously, the way that it's transported and back to the vehicles are being used and the way the plant's managed and all the rest of it will dictate that. So are they happy? No, they're not. But at the end of the day, that plant was a big investment in South Ribble, and you're not going to build a plant like that all over the county of Lancashire. And there are two at the moment, a north and a south, and technically, I suppose, at some point they'll want one in the east, because the big debate at Lancashire Leaders was East Lancashire are a bit frustrated generally at the moment about the fact that they don't have sufficient tips of all kinds in East Lancashire. A bit odd really, given how many quarries they've got. You think they'd have more tipping sites, but they haven't. There's a bit of a standoff between districts and county about who pays for what, and that means wagons are transporting an awful lot of waste from the east part of the county to the western, southern, northern parts of the county, which is not good for the environment or good for residents. So there has to be more of a joined up approach, and the Lancashire Waste Partnership and a grouping of all the leaders in Lancashire are discussing that at the moment as part of collection and disposal of waste in general. Part of that is food waste, part of that is other strands of waste, and it's an emerging policy. And to quote whatever he was, director or whatever of waste, said, it is good that we are working so closely together. I'd say it'd be good if we actually delivered some improvements together that cut the amount of wagons coming down the M65 and get some of that tipping up in East Lancashire. But that's a symptom of this history, if you like, Julia. So, to go back to your question, South Ribble are not happy, but they got the plant and they got the investment for the plant, so they knew what they were getting when they got it. Was that right, Doug? Generally?
I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said.
Anybody else? If not, we'll move on to the next one. If you want to go, Doug, you're welcome to.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Moving on to item 4, which is an item requested by Whitley Woods and Exton Parish Council, which is to do with devolution. I think that's over to yourself, isn't it?
Thank you, Chair. I suspect I might be deferring to Councillor Bradley at some point, depending on how tricky the questions get. But there's a report on the pack which talks about where we're currently up to in terms of local government reorganisation. I don't suppose any members in the room need to have a map of Lancashire to remind you what Lancashire looks like. But one of the key things that we've had to consider at the District Council is that paragraph 4 sets out the 6 requirements that government have set for all parts of the UK to consider when they're looking at local government reorganisation. I think it's fair to say that for such a huge piece of work and a huge undertaking, the timescales are really quite short. Now, in Chorley, we're really fortunate that the district council has come to a firm decision in which it prefers the model that is at the agenda page 13 at the bottom. There's a coloured map, and you can see there that that proposal combines West Lancashire, Chorley and South Ribble. You'll hear people talking about a 4 model. That actually means the number of unitary authorities that are being proposed. So you can see on that map, there's a green, a blue, a purple and a red. So there's the 4 new proposed unitary authorities. That's Chorley's preferred model. It's not the preferred model right across the county. You can see that in paragraph 6, so that's Lancaster, Preston, Ribble Valley, West Lancs are also supportive of that 4 unitary authority model. There are other models floating around. I think there's a 3 model, there's a 5 model. Is there a north and a south model? Oh, east-west anyway. So yes, there are still various models being discussed by district and county. I think the deadline, Councillor Bradley, correct me, is the kind of end of November, where a proposal, hopefully a proposal, whether it will get to be a proposal, is put forward to government that this is what Lancashire would like to see. Paragraphs 9 onwards, 9, 10 and 11, I suspect is where kind of interest is in this meeting, which is about making sure that we, the district, take the views of the town and parish councils on board. And as I said at the beginning, the speed at which we're having to get to the position we are now has meant that we've been focusing on work with other districts and with the county. The phase that we're now in, because Chorley Council has made its decision clear, means that we are now going to be able to start to come and have consultations with parish and town councils about a whole range of things, including one of the questions was about assets and looking at kind of the management and ownership of different assets. There isn't a firm decision, a firm view at the moment, and that will be part of that discussion and consultation. And I think it's fair to say there's so much that's still undecided and up in the air that we're quite a way yet from getting into the real kind of detail of how those individual assets and similar kind of questions will be decided. So happy to take questions. I may well defer to others in the room who kind of are closer to the process than I am, but that gives you a fair kind of overview of where we are at the moment.
Thank you. I'll open it up to the floor. Have we got any questions? Councillor Deborah Platt.
Hiya. Yeah, Whittle and Exton proposed this query. It's not about it's not about devolution at all. It's about reorganisation, and it is specific, not about the process, because we know where you're up to. Well, I hope everybody knows where we're up to, but I do, and my council understands as well. It's about talking to the parishes. Now, the government said the expectation is you should be talking to us, but we've not been talked to yet. You said it's soon, but soon's not quite good enough. There's no information. There's been no contact from the borough to the parishes. I mean, specifically this report that you've put with the agenda, it says the council is committed to continuing to work closely. You've not worked with us at all on this, so it's rather misleading that it should say something like we will be working with you when we get round to it, but it's when you get round to it is the important thing. And then just going on to the assets, if it is the case that Chorley might feel it wants to leave assets in the ownership of the local bodies such as parishes, because they are in the parishes and they'll be well looked after if we've got the ability to do so. I had a look at Chorley's asset list, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Should have counted them before. 9 things in Exton on the asset list. and there's at least 25 more that's not on the asset list. So for all the parishes, if they're looking at the asset list and they go, oh, right, well, there's only those 2 or 3, 4 or 5, 6 or 7, there's not. There'll be twice as much at least. So the parishes aren't really, they're not armed with the information because the information isn't out there because it's not correct. And we're also not being spoken to yet. So it's when, how quickly. And I know you can't give any information on whether you're going to pass assets on yet because you haven't decided that. You know, you mentioned that. But it's the fact that we've just been left in the dark. We should have been spoken to right at the beginning when the process was submitted with the first plan. And I know you're not getting round to the next one till November. We're going to have the whole of August off. So where are we up to, really?
Councillor Bradley, are you taking that one?
I can. I'm not going to apologise for the government and or other councils in Lancashire. What I'll try and state is the position. So up until the county elections, which recently took place, there was a bit of a divergence about where we were going next and how quick things would happen, let's put it that way. I still think there is a bit of a divergence about how quick what things will happen. I'll let others in the room comment on that if they want to or not. As a result, we're not as progressive as we'd like to be. We only got a letter from the minister just after the elections to basically say, you're carrying on, get on with it. That's not been helpful about having a detailed discussion about whatever the proposals may be. It says there, I think, in the report about those discussions taking place in the late summer with the parish councils and with other partners and stakeholders, so the NHS and people like that, in that period. And that's particularly who the government are afterwards communicating with at the moment, not so much residents, because if you go to residents now and say about something that's not even a proposal, it's very hard to have that discussion. It's not a divine thing. So the timetable at the minute is the work is being done currently, and we've only appointed consultants a couple of weeks ago to do this, to basically disaggregate the county council and district councils and unitary councils' budgets across the whole of Lancashire. Okay, and the information wasn't there until about 3 weeks ago, just after Mark Wynne, the Chief Executive of County Council, came back off his holidays. So it wasn't there. It is now. So basically the building blocks of whatever those structures look like are being put together. And as Liz said, that will then be restuck together to form either a 2 option, a 3 option, a 4 option or a 5 option, which will be promoted by whichever councils support that. And South Ribble Council are discussing tonight what they're reaffirming their position about what they want to see. And I understand they're discussing whether it's a 3 or a 4 option, but obviously I'm hoping it's a 4 option as previously outlined by their leader, but not gone through full council, which is what it's doing there tonight. That would prompt a conversation around the general principles of reorganisation with the parish councils in late summer, early autumn, for submission in November, like you point out, Liz. And that's what we're aiming for. That's certainly what we're aiming for in Chorley, because in a way Chorley, as Liz said, stated its position earlier. We will have that will be overseen by the second stage. So when we've got these building blocks broken down, which should be in the next month or so, we'll then be coming out to those partners to say, right, if we put these building blocks together in this arrangement that we like, and bear in mind, Chorley and South Ribble have got a good experience of working together and know how each other works, and we do quite a lot of work with West Lanc, so we are far ahead of a lot of the other areas that are talking about working together. At that point, we come to parish councils and other partners to say, this is what we're thinking of doing, that's how the money works, and that's how we think you would fit into this arrangement. What's your view on that? I think that's a better conversation because it's about something that's planned as opposed to a theoretical. I take the point on that it's not happened early enough, but I think some of that's been led by the way the government's done it. And like I said, I'm not going to apologise for them, that's the way they've done it. I also, back to the assets bit, there is a detailed assets register now in Chorley Council because a lot of work has been done on it, and members of the DOG group, which I think, Alan, you're on as well, or is it Craigson? I can't remember, I think it's you, Alan. There is an exhaustive list now of every asset this council has across every parish and the unparished areas in Chorley, down to bins, down to every last bit and piece, from buildings to bins to every last thing we've got, because that's now been done. And every councillor, certainly, and I'm happy to share it, parish councils can have a copy of that at any point in time. And I would imagine there's 120 things in Exton that are on that list, if I'm being honest with you. You need to get your hands on that and think about that. At the moment, there is no plans to change the arrangements around ownership of all that stuff, because that's effectively a stage 3, 4 discussion about when we do get to, there is a proposal to do summit, what that summit looks like, and then how many town halls do you need, how many bins do you need, how many whatevers you need. That's a further down the line discussion. I think the question now would be is, if there are assets, would parish councils be keen on taking any of those assets on? But that's very much a, yes we would, let's talk about it later kind of thing. That's just my view. The one direction we've had from government, and this was from Jim McMahon himself, because he asked the question on a webinar thing, was he's keen that this isn't seen as an opportunity to dispose of loads of council assets, because as he says, in lots of areas, the civic buildings are quite architecturally important, they're important for the community and all the rest of it, so just closing them down and building something new, or leaving them to go derelict or selling them off or whatever it might be, he thinks it might be a retrograde step. But that was just his comment as the minister. Beyond that, happy to have a conversation with any parish council about assets at any time. As you know, Deborah, because we've discussed assets previously, both owned and shared assets, for positive and negative reasons in the past with lots of parish councils. So let's have that. The other benefit that might come out of this is there's also a push alongside that reorganisation around parishing, because that seems to have been brought in as well. Sorry. Oh, is that the second one? Right. We'll pick up that later. So that might add to the discussion we've had previously about areas that are on parish, particularly Bookshore and what have you. So we'll pick that up later, Chair. But that's where we're at the minute. I think it's a bit of a chicken and egg. And until we get to that stage, we can't have these detailed discussions. But I know certain parishes are thinking about it, whereas others are totally ignorant and you know, are unaware of what the changes that might be coming. Is that helpful, Chair?
I think it does. Thank you, Alistair. Katrina.
Thank you. In real English, have we got dates? Is it September? Is it November? Is it 2026? Is it 2029?
No. At the moment, for that consultation, because it's part of the consultant's brief to go out and do this for us.
How long, though?
When they've got these building blocks. And at the moment, I don't know, and I'm being honest here, I can go and find out when they're going to deliver that first paper. I suspect that first paper is going to be delivered end of July, beginning of August.
This year?
Now, yeah, because we'll be coming out August, September, because if this council is going to have a report to consider, it's probably got to be in October to get it in November. That's just my workings out.
That's fine.
That's very fast. And I
realise that, but I'm just...
That's what we're talking about.
It's saying we've got building blocks, it's this, but we need dates. Because when we go back to our parishes, I don't know the rest of you.
Liz will go away and we'll come up with dates for Chorley. Right. But bear in mind, we're trying to work across the lots of Lancashire, and in Chorley, as Liz highlighted, there are 6 councils, hopefully, if South will agree tonight, working together. Yeah. And the idea would be we'd go out to similar conversations with the parish councils in all those areas. That would be sensible in my view, because we're not doing this here, that there, something else differently.
Okay, thank you for that.
I'll give you some name. County Councillor Riggers.
I suppose from my perspective, wearing my parish hat, which I'm not technically wearing here today, I think just having the asset list would be really helpful to start those conversations, because then at the parish we can start having a conversation of what things do we have in Exton, what do we think our view is. So when you're ready to come and ask those questions, we've had time to do that research. Bear in mind, we only meet once a month properly. There's a summer break, some of those things might take some time to get to a view. So we're ready to respond when you're kind of ready to ask. I understand the timescales you're up against.
I don't see a problem sharing that, do you? It's a public record. It's public stuff, so why would it be a problem sharing it? And it created a lot of debate at the door, because everybody looked at their own area, went, bloody hell, what's that, what's this, and all the rest of it.
It's not my department, but if there's any problems with that, then we'll make sure that there's a clear explanation why that can't happen. But I think we'd start from the position of, yes, we do want to share that.
Councillor Deborah Platt. Alistair's not going to answer your question before you ask it, is he?
No, I'll expand. No, just on the list, if it's the one that's on the website already, that's the list that I've got here, and there's 25 not on it and 9 on it. If it's a new list that isn't on the website, I would really like it tomorrow morning, because our meeting is tomorrow night, unfortunately. And we were looking for a result from here to take to that meeting, because we've got it on the agenda again, because we had it on last month as well. And then following on about the unparished areas, Fylde obviously thought about this in advance and they're fully parish now, as are other areas. But it just leaves Chorley, I think, with a collection of residents without that level of government, whereas other residents have that level of government. And when Chorley dissolves and Lancashire dissolves and all the councillors get mixed up, because obviously they'll all not be borough councillors anymore and they'll not be county councillors anymore, and only some of them will go on to be unitary councillors, that linkage from residents to councillors will be lost, because unless the same one stays, it'll be gone. And I think parish councils will become important to that level, those residents. But in some places in Chorley, they won't have that, whereas the villages on the outer we already have that in place, and we know where to go to speak to those people. So it would be nice to know what Chorley feel it wants to do about all the residents without a parish council. Cheers.
Agree, and therefore the thing about the asset register, political takeaway, I talked to Adam Nixon's team who put that register together. I think it's a filter on the database, so whichever filter you put on says the level. Now, that you might just have a list of the assets over a certain value or a certain size or whatever it might be, but I'm fairly sure it's a fairly comprehensive record now, because that's what we were told, weren't we, Liz?
Yes, it's relatively recently pulled together. I'm now going to quickly send an email to colleagues so they'll get it when they get in first thing tomorrow to check, can we get that sent out?
Right. And then back to your second point, the biggest areas that are unparished are obviously the town areas and Buckshire. Am I right? You know more about this than I do.
No, Buckshire is parish. It's either Exton or Whittle.
Right. Where I thought it was an area that wasn't, because it was at... It's complicated a bit by the RMG... Yeah, RMG bit.
It is parish.
Right.
So
So are there any other bits, and I bow to your knowledge on this because you're a, whatever it is, ALC, whatever, are there any other bits of Chorley that aren't parished apart from the urban core? Just the urban core? Yeah, the poor. So therefore, in my view, and this is the bit that's a bit interesting, and this comes back to what unitarisation does, if you've got the unitarisation moving a level up, effectively for districts, but in the district area, it'll make no difference in Blackburn and Blackpool, but it moves up to that higher level. To me, and this is again me just talking off the top of my head, is there's a reason for the expanded of the parish councils to move up a bit as well, because there's going to be things that need to be done at that more hyper-local area, which might be parishes working together as well in clusters, which is the sensible thing that I would think. The question then is there a Chorley town council, for want of a better phrase, I like to add Liaison Town Council, that does something like that, or do you split Chorley into 3 or 4 parts, or a north town, west town? And they do that in other areas, don't they? Pendle do this sort of neighbourhood area working, and others have started to do that as well. So I think it's a discussion that we will prompt, and I'm happy to do that, Deborah, because I think it will be useful. Because in the past, the town hasn't needed it because it's effectively central. So. There you go.
Councillor Humpler.
Thank you, Chair. Just an opinion that when you talk about an asset transfer, I think from the parish council's point of view, it'll be a liabilities transfer. And the parish councils set the precept sort of December, January time. And the longer they go, the longer they kept waiting, the more that gets delayed, and the more 1 year they're going to go up by 1,000% or whatever. So
at the moment, the proposal is, as I understand it again, and this is what's happened in other areas, is a lift and shift. So if we got reconstituted tomorrow into that new area, everything that those 3 councils currently own would be lifted and shifted to the new entity. There wouldn't be any divergence and stuff, but straight away that council will be thinking, do I need 3 of these, 3 of those, 3 of everything else, yeah? Depots, all the rest of it. And we have that discussion now with South Ribble. Do we need a big depot in, and Doug's gone, in Chorley, because we've got a big depot at Moss Side that we can use currently for our bin wagons, yeah? We just discussed that before. So we're always looking at what we can do to rationalise efficiencies and all the rest of it. So at the moment, it will be a lift and shift. So all the assets of those 3 councils would move to the upper body, and at that point, a rationalisation would take place. And at that point, any kind of transfers and whatever will kick in under a one public estate kind of conversation where it's all publicly owned stuff. The first people who should look to take it on would be other public bodies if they want it, and then if not, then it goes to market. Unlike what happened out there with the Ministry of Justice, where they basically sold it to the highest bidder, and now we're stuck with a eyesore on our doors. So it needs to go through that process, and there is a system for doing that. They just go outside it when it suits them.
Councillor Deborah Black.
Sorry to labour this, but it's not my understanding that everything goes up to the unitary. That's a choice. The borough can do the devolution or the devolving down of little pieces to the parishes whenever it chooses to do.
Oh, yeah,
and many of them have done prior to it going to unitary, knowing that going up to this into this brand new, probably slightly debt-ridden unitary council who will not know my play area from your play area to someone else's play area. They felt that it's more beneficial to do it in the earlier stages, which is after you've set your plan of your 3 or 4 unitaries and before you actually become a unitary. So it's not my understanding that it all goes up to unitary and then they rationalise it. It can be done before, and it has been done before in many areas. It's whether I think all of us lot choose to do it that way, or whether we choose to do it as and when the parishes are asking for it to be done.
Fair enough. Make that point in your consultation response.
Thank you, everybody. Any more questions?
Just thank Deb.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you, Liz. And we'll move on. We've now got 2 items requested by Adlington Town Council, one on HMOs and one on EV charging points. Now, we had a response at the full council, didn't we, Alistair? Do you want to run with that? Or, I mean, the response is actually on the agenda.
To summarise, Chair, what happened last night.
Yeah,
there is a response. There's a link to the report, but also a resident of Adlington came to the meeting and asked a public question, which any resident is entitled to do, in 3 parts about effectively who was in charge of... there's a new action plan, which there's a link there to, which is Chorley's action plan, which you can read to your heart's content. It's 20 or 30 pages of detail about how Chorley's going to deal with HMOs, which isn't a problem, as we discussed last night, for Chorley. It's a national problem. There was the question the gentleman asked from Adlington, who is obviously concerned around one HMO property in Adlington, which has been subject to much discussion, and I don't want to particularly talk about that. But the general policy was, his questions was, why has it not been done sooner? Why is Chorley, if you like, behind certain other councils in the northwest, although ahead of other councils, and who's going to be in charge of delivering it, and how will that information be disseminated to residents? So to deal with it in the 3 parts, the reason we haven't previously taken the action, we do have powers currently that we use, particularly around licensed HMOs, but the things around Article 4 planning controls, I think you discussed at your last meeting, and enhanced environmental health inspections, we can do. We've been watching very closely what Preston have done, and it tends to be the Preston, Wigans, Boltons that have attracted HMOs in the first tranche because they have more cheaper housing, because cheaper housing attracts HMOs because the landlords make a bigger financial return. So, and in Chorley, HMOs aren't particularly, unless I'm trying to be corrected by members in the room, a problem in Brindle or Horton or Bretherton or Maudsley, because the house prices in those areas drive out those operators, okay? So where is becoming a problem from HMOs, and in my own ward in the town centre and in the area around this town hall, it has been a problem because there's more cheaper housing. It is now expanding out into the Adlingtons, Copples, the larger Clayton Brooks, the larger urban villages, okay? So that's just a statement of fact. And most of those HMOs are replacing cheaper private rented stock, because people are selling out from private rented stock because the returns aren't there anymore, and they're changing it, they're converting them into HMOs because that's where the money is. Therefore, we've seen that happening in Wigan, Bolton, Preston, etc. Preston have done a big study, and they were surprised by their findings, which found that they thought it was a problem in their inner city core, and it was a conversion of commercial office blocks into HMOs. What they found as part of their study, which was briefed to the JAC, which which is our joint planning arrangements with Preston, was they found actually it was becoming a problem in some of their more suburban areas, into Ribbleton and into Lear and those kind of areas. So they were seeing this, and that was a surprise to them. And what they did as part of that study was they also identified ways that we can help to spot HMOs which are less than the 6 occupant HMOs, which don't have to be properly licensed or fully licensed. So therefore there's a way now you can spot the smaller HMO operations which sort of fly under the radar, but are still equally problematic at times if they are not run well for residents in the surrounding area. So the gentleman last night said, right, what are you doing about it? So we now have an action plan that we're going to deliver over the next 12 months. One of the questions was, can you speed that action plan up? Yes, we can, if circumstances dictate it. But any action you take under either an Article 4 or environmental health powers, you have to have evidence to substantiate why you're taking that action. Particularly on an Article 4 arrangement, if you do it as an immediate Article 4, because you have to then pay compensation to the HMO operators. And the risk is we end up giving public money to people who are there to make money out of the public purse anyway, quite often, because they're housing people who are on benefits, etc. So very complicated setup. So then this gentleman then asked about who's going to be in charge of that. Ultimately, Lizzie's boss, the Director for Environmental Standards, is in charge of it from this council's point of view. And to a certain extent on the Article 4, the Director of Planning and Property, which is Gail Wotton. Also, obviously, the members responsible are, so Bev Murray, who's the Cabinet Member for that, Terry Howard, who's a Cabinet Member for Housing, and Alex Hilton, who's a Cabinet Member for Planning and Property. But also, myself as a leader, Peter Wilson as Deputy Leader, Chris Sinnott as Chief Exec, etc. We're all responsible, but it's particularly environmental health as a lead on this, because it's about housing standards for people being right and proper, because that's the ultimate thing. And then on the planning side, it's more about the disruption and the loss of amenity to residents by the actions of those landlords, allowing their tenants to behave in whatever manner they're behaving. And some of those landlords, unfortunately, or the operators of those units are government agencies, which is deplorable in my view. You know, the Sercos and the what have yous. So we need to be, and we have dealt with that quite strongly in Chorley, which is why Chorley has a track record of dealing with these issues previously, and there's HMOs within 2 streets of this building we've taken action on very hard in the past and have solved those problems. But over time, they flare up again and it wears residents down. So the guy last night also said, can this be accelerated? Can it be speeded up if circumstances and evidence dictates? And of course, Councillor Wilson, who presented the report, said, yes, we can. The action plan then, to brief it back, will be briefed back via the Cabinet meetings that we have on about a monthly basis here. It's a public meeting, anybody can listen into it. The papers are published publicly, which will say, this is the action plan, this is where we're up to, that's how far we've got, and we're on course to deliver what we said we'd deliver, or it's changed because of the circumstances changing. So it's visible, it's done within the law, because unfortunately we have to work within the law. Again, just for information, when we got reported back at the JAC meeting, which is about planning in Article 4, of the 78 planning applications that had gone to committee because they'd imposed an Article 4 agreement in Preston, 77 were still approved for HMOs. It wasn't stopping HMOs, it was just taking them through the committee system, because ultimately they have to have very good planning grounds to refuse them. And in that, otherwise they go to appeal and come through anyway. So that was an interesting finding to me and other members of the JAC about how many had ended up with the refusal, which I think, unfortunately, is what residents think it will end up with. Because even if the local planning committee refuses it, it then goes to appeal and gets passed on appeal. Is that a summarisation of where we were up to last night, sir?
That's quite good, Councillor Bradley, yeah. Any questions? Yes, Liz.
I said anything wrong. It was just that if in any of the parishes, in any of your areas, you suspect a property is an HMO or you wonder whether it is, contact the environmental health team and they can do their investigations. So please don't think it's the list that we currently know about. I know there's been discussions about, well, what about this property? No one seems to know about it. Please let the environmental health team know.
Or report it via your councillor, who can then report it as well. Because your local borough councillor, because we are quite often informed of that's an HMO. When I'm digging down into it, it's not a HMO. So there are times we're told it's an HMO when it's not. It might be something else. But a lot of them are. So and local intelligence is the best intelligence.
Thank you, Alistair. Baron.
Thank you, Chair. Just something you said there, Alistair. Do we know where all the HMOs are that are under 6 occupancy?
As I just said, I suspect we haven't fully because they also change. So they come and go, you know, they get moved around. But the techniques that Preston used, which I think were quite impressive how they did it, we are following that template, which will help us to identify where they are. Because you better got to triangulate information from lots of different sources, which you can't do overtly. You've got to do anonymised, but that would indicate that some are HMOs. But the single biggest, like I said, is residents reporting it and saying, I think that is a HMO, and therefore, even if it's less than the threshold for doing a licensing, it's still subject to basic environmental health housing standards that need to be imposed. And in due course, again, with evidence, you can start to bring in local area actions around that. All right, so no, I don't think we do at the minute, but I think we know where most of them are, but there will be one, you know, there will always be some operating because they just opened, or they're still being converted, or whatever it might be.
For you, Chair, when we're out canvassing and we come across them, should we, I think we should start a list? Yeah.
For you, Chair, report it to the HO, to that department.
Any more questions? Julie?
Yeah, I'm concerned that it's not really visible on the website, and it would be really good if we had some sort of hotline, and we should be encouraging residents, if they've got any concerns about housing, not just about HMOs, because I wouldn't want them to hesitate over sort of some odd informal arrangements that are going on in people's neighbourhoods. It's, you know, we rely on the voices of residents to alert us to some of these incidents, really, so the more visible it is, the better. And also, I would be happier if there was more information, and that might be a county remit, I'm not sure, about making sure that residents know the rights about housing. You know, we're in a bit of a flux with legislation changing around, you know, tenancies, and I just think there's not enough information out there that's succinct, really, and the libraries could be probably a really good place to be geared up with advocacy and helping out, but the basic information about rights would be helpful.
Thank you, Julie. Any more questions? Otherwise, we'll move on to the next item. Next item is item 6, which is an item requested by Wealton Parish Council. Basically, from what I'm reading here, it's suggestions on Facebook how to control social media. Is it, Terry?
No, it's not correct, that, to be honest. What Wealton wanted to do was to pick the brains of other people in this room. We want to know what parish councils are using social media, either privately or as part of the organisational structure of the parish council. Who actually administers it? What do you call it? We were thinking of Wealton Truth Social or Wealton Telegram. But we think we'll go to Wealton Facebook. But at the end of the day, there's been so much misinformation on some of our local Facebook pages that we want to get past that. So we're really saying, is there a register of what parish councils do with social media? I suspect there isn't, but can we learn from each other?
Thank you, Terry. Is that something we need to check on, Liz?
I can certainly ask colleagues in the communications team if there is a list or a register. I suspect, like you've said, there probably isn't, but I can double check that and get someone to confirm. Yeah.
Right, well, the reply we got was basically an idiot's guide to what Facebook is and things like that. I wrote my first computer program in 1966, and I'll tell you now, it was awful. It was terrible. But the key thing about saying a statement like that is we've now got such sophistication in social media, we need to harness it for the good of the parish. So we're asking for help.
Yes, Councillor Bradley.
Ailes, do the Parish Council Association do work on that?
Well, I was just going to say, you need to buddy up with a council that has it. So quite a lot of parish councils that I know of have a page that belongs to the parish council. Exton has one, certainly. Croston, Eccleston has them. Clayton Woods, Whitley Woods, they all have them. So it's just a case of ringing one up and saying, how do you do this? Or why don't you do that? Just give them a ring and see which model they're using and which one's best for you.
Deborah, I agree with that principle, but at the end of the day, we need to formalise this, because who actually is doing the admin on it, who's got control of the Facebook or what other social media we're using, and the parish councils. Yes, we need to work together, but we can learn from each other.
Just in response to that, if the parish council wants a parish council page, then the parish council administers it and puts someone in charge of it, and it's most likely going to be the clerk, because the clerk is the employee. But a couple of councils have different models. They have a couple of councillors doing it as well as backup, just in case the clerk's not around. But like I say, it's not something to be formalised, I think, here and by Chorley. It's the parish councils are autonomous and they do what they want. And if they want Facebook, then they need to sort of think about how they're going to administer it, really. So I'd say link in with another parish council that has it and pick their brains.
Thank you, Deborah. You all right with that, Terry? Yeah. Move on. The next item, question from members of Liaison and the public. Yes.
Can I just say, item 5 was 2 parts and was to do with EVs.
Imagine you spotting that.
I think we also discussed this at council, didn't we? That at the moment they're just the town centre, are they? Is that, am I correct in that, Councillor Bradley?
I think the response is dead on, Chair. It says that obviously we're trialling a new approach to EV charging. We've started to roll that in the town centre. The intention is to roll it out to Chorley car parks elsewhere. But there is a question about funding, because it's the volume of charging you do as to whether you can recoup your money over a relevant period, because we're not awash with cash. We're having, we all have budget gaps, etc. And therefore, it's got to have the rollover of that charging to make it pay. But we will look on a case-by-case basis. So what we're saying is people can liaise with us and let us know where they think they would work. There is money through the county council, who have the local electric vehicle infrastructure funding, which is a lot of money. And they have looked at certain areas, but again, they've tended to focus in the town centre because it gives you bang for your buck. So therefore, I think parishes need to come forward with sites that they would see happening. The other thing we're doing is generally doing it, if we are upgrading a car park, we're building the EV chargers in at that point. So rather than doing it as an isolated upgrade, we're doing it as part of wider improvements. So if a car park's due for resurfacing or remodelling, to put the EV chargers in at that point. And you'll all be aware we had a big study done about EV charging, and the one thing it said was the technology changes all the time. So as a result, if you're not careful, you end up putting the wrong technology in, and you've got to think about the actual plan and its payback period, etc. And that's where we are, Chair. So we're piloting some different approaches in different places, and then we'll start to roll it out further, subject to money.
Councillor Bradley, you okay with that, Aaron? Yeah. Any more questions on that? As I say, we'll go to number 7, which is questions from members of Liaison and the public. Previously, obviously, I prefer questions to be submitted so that if there's something technical, we can get the relevant officer here to try and help. But if anybody's got any questions they'd like to raise, quite happy to. We can always get an answer if we can't give an answer here and now. So is there anything anybody would like to raise? Yes, Ian.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question, really. as to whether the council has got any policy regarding noise levels in the town centre. And I'm particularly referring to street entertainers and amplified music in competition with all the local venues that also have music playing, because I've noticed that, well, two things. In the press, some boroughs have had to put restrictions on it because of the noise levels that have been experienced. And the other one being that sometimes it can get quite unpleasant in the town centre when you've got all these noise sources competing for attention.
That'd probably be environmental health, would it, Liz?
Yes, I can take that to environmental health and between them and the events team, and yes, so we can get an answer to that, but I suspect it'll be an environmental health answer.
Just to add to that, and Liz can come back and give you the law, but it tends to have to be repetitive and noisy for a sustained period to be able to be preventable. Because if it's just occasionally, it's very hard to prove, Liz, isn't it? I think it has to be sustained. And given we actually promote buskers in the town centre because we think it's a good thing to do because it promotes a private town centre, and that's not buskers who are there with their hands out having money, it's about street entertainers. Yes, sometimes they can jar because you've got one at one end of Chapel Street and one at the other, and depending on your musical taste, it depends what they're playing. We do have an issue with a certain church who quite often are very noisy, and again, they don't seek permission to go and do what they do in the town centre. We have asked them to let us know and to try and spread it around a bit so they're not doing it all the same time outside the same shops or the same bars, because they tend to complain. But that church are led by God rather than the council in the nicest possible way. So they are proletising out there to get their message across, and they'll do it as loud as they possibly can. We encourage them to think about others, because that's what you would do, but we can't actually prevent them because they're not doing it every Saturday at the same time, what have you. They're doing it every so often in a certain place at a certain time, and they move around. So there's lots we can do, but it has to be fairly a fixed point that's happening all the time. And compared to most town centres, our town centre is actually quite quiet most of the time. It's just certain nights of the week, Chair.
Thank you, Alistair. Councillor Chris Noor.
Well, I don't really see this as a big problem. And I think it's a good indication of a lively and successful town centre. We go to Manchester, we go to Munich or Paris or whatever, and we see hundreds of these people, and it's part of life's rich tapestry, isn't it? And if people are making a little bit of money from busking, it's a tradition that's been around since, prehistory, as soon as people have had musical instruments. So I quite welcome the noise. Yeah, of course, if it gets out of hand, we have the means to control it, as Councillor Bradley says, and I don't particularly like evangelists shouting at me, but they have a right to do so.
Thank you, Chris. If there are no more questions, move on. Item 8 is future meetings. There is a schedule on the agenda. Thank you, Alistair. There is a schedule on the agenda. Hope everybody's got that. And any urgent business previously agreed with the chair? Oh, yes, Eddie.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to suggest an item possibly for a future agenda. I don't know whether I can do it here or whether I have to do it in a different method.
Yeah, sorry, I missed that one.
No.
Right.
I know we're all keen to be somewhere else. And now Alistair's gone, I can talk openly now. At Exton, we've had a number of applications that we've seen on the parish council for conversions of residential properties to children's homes. And I think we've had at least 3 different outcomes. Sorry, Al. 3 different outcomes recently where one was approved, one was rejected, I think, on highways grounds, and then one was rejected, that was in the Buckshaw Village parish part, because the council determined it was a change of use and now needed planning permission. Yeah. So I think it'd be useful to maybe have a session on how that works, if the council policy is changing and how it's viewed those, so as parish councils know how to respond and how we all know how to respond and advise to residents, because I think once we start pushing on the door of all these HMOs and other things, it's going to open up potentially more of these unregistered ones that the county or people don't know about till somebody reports it.
Thank you, Eddie. Can we make a note of that? Yeah, no, I don't see any reason. I mean, I actually raised a comment just before the close of the meeting about HMOs and in the town centre and a bike shed. Put a bike shed in and they don't need any parking. And yeah, you're telling me that people that live in these HMOs never have a vehicle? No, they don't. So with that, I'll call the meeting to an end, and thank you very much for your attendance and safe journeys home. Thank you.